For years, Elena sacrificed everything for her family. She supported her husband's career, raised their son alone, and ignored her own loneliness because she believed love meant endurance. But the day she discovered her husband living a second life with another woman and child, something inside her broke. And sometimes, breaking is exactly how powerful women are reborn. This story is for every woman who has ever felt invisible, unappreciated, or betrayed.
It felt like watching a car crash in slow motion. That Friday, my best friend Chloe practically dragged me to a charity gala in Newport Beach. She said I needed to see something other than the four walls of my son's editing suite. Alex, who's 17, had been glued to his screen for weeks, finishing his application film for USC, and our house was thick with tension. So I went. One night couldn't hurt, right? I never imagined a few hours of cocktails and silent auctions would utterly demolish my life. We were near the main stage when Chloe nudged me, debating a bid on a trip to Tuscany. That's when I saw him across the ballroom, and my blood ran cold. It was my husband's, Julian Croft, wearing the one-of-a-kind Patek Philippe I'd mortgaged our first home to buy for our 15th anniversary. He was holding a little boy, maybe 4, whose arms were wrapped tightly around his neck, letting out this pure, happy shriek of a laugh. My first thought was, isn't he supposed to be closing a real estate deal in Dubai? My second thought was erased by the boy's voice, which explained everything. Daddy, can we get the big chocolate cake? The boy pointed to the dessert table, his voice surprisingly clear in the loud ballroom. Daddy, he called him Daddy. A high-pitched whine started in my ears, drowning everything else out. Chloe was still looking at the auction catalogue, completely unaware. I stumbled back against a pillar for support, and that's when she saw my face. Amelia, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I couldn't speak. I just stared. Julian set the boy down, knelt to fix his tiny bow tie, and gave him a smile so full of love it made me sick to my stomach. I hadn't seen that smile in years. And standing right beside him, with a hand on Julian's arm like it belonged there, was a woman in a stunning emerald gown. I knew her instantly. Dr. Eva Rostova, Julian's star architect. About 4 years ago, I'd dropped by his firm with lunch. Eva was the one who met me at the door, all polite smiles, saying, "Mrs. Croft, what a nice surprise." Back then, she wore a severe pantsuit, her hair in a tight bun, a far cry from the confident, radiant woman holding court tonight. Chloe followed my gaze and her mouth fell open. "Oh my God! Is that Julian?" I didn't answer. My hands were trembling, but I managed to pull my phone from my clutch. I lifted my phone and took the shot. Julian was pointing out the orchestra to the little boy. Eva was right there, handing the child a sparkling water from a passing waiter's tray. The boy beamed, yelling, "Thanks, Daddy." "You're the best!" Julian leaned in and kissed his hair. Click! I got the picture, then another, and a third just to be safe. They began to walk towards the terrace, Julian holding the boy's hand, while his other hand found Eva's, a perfect little family. The boy smudged some chocolate on his cheek, and Julian, without missing a beat, grabbed a napkin and gently wiped it away, that effortless fatherly reflex. He had never, not once, shown that kind of care for our son, Alex. When Alex was 6, he got a horrible case of pneumonia. I called Julian from the hospital, crying, begging him to fly back from a conference in London, but he said the final keynote was too important to miss. When Alex won his first student film festival at 10, I sent him the clip. Julian's only reply was a text. "Good work." Now Alex was 17, and I'd been the only parent at every screening, every parent-teach night for a decade. I gave that man a son, raised him for 17 years, and Julian never once bothered to wipe a smudge from his face. Chloe grabbed my arm, her voice a frantic whisper. "Amelia, say something, please." I lowered my phone, turned my back on them, and took a long, shaky breath. "We're leaving." Chloe was stunned. "That's it? You're not going to march over there and tear them apart?" I just repeated myself. "We're leaving, now." I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the valet, refusing to look back. It wasn't until we were in her car and the doors were shut that I saw my palms were bleeding where my nails had dug into them. Chloe drove, glancing at my reflection in the dark console screens, but said nothing. I pulled up the photo and zoomed in. The boy was beautiful, with Julian's exact same sharp, intelligent eyes, a miniature Julian. He looked about 4, maybe 5. That meant Julian and Eva had been together for at least 5 or 6 years. While I was putting my own architectural firm on hold to help him launch his company, Croft Properties, from the ground up. I remember designing his first high-rise. I worked so hard I had stress-induced vertigo for 3 straight months. And all that time, Alex was just a little boy, asking every single night, "When is Dad coming home?" And I'd make up stories, telling him his father was creating a legacy for our future. My God, what an absolute fool I've been. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass and just started to laugh. A brittle, ugly sound that shattered into sobs. Chloe tossed a box of tissues into the back. "Amelia Croft, you stop that right now. Cry, scream, whatever, but that laughing is terrifying me." "Seriously, you're scaring me." I ignored the tissues, using my sleeve to wipe my eyes. My voice came out icy and calm, which shocked me. "Chloe, I need a lawyer. It's Friday night. We'll find someone first thing Monday." "Monday is too late," I said. "I need one tonight." Chloe bit her lip for a moment, then spun the wheel, making a sharp, illegal U-turn and heading back toward the city skyline. During the drive, I dialed Alex's number. He answered on the first ring. "Mom?" He sounded drained, like he'd been editing for days. Just hearing him made my heart clench. It took me a second to find my voice. "Honey, I need to ask you something very important." "Yeah, what is it?" I held the phone tighter. If your father and I decided to get a divorce, who would you want to live with?" The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. When Alex finally spoke, all the exhaustion was gone from his voice. "Mom, what did he do? Just answer the question for me, please." There was zero hesitation. "You." The word was like a gunshot. Then he said it again. "Mom, it's you. No matter what happened, I'm on your side." I closed my eyes as a fresh wave of silent tears fell. "Okay, honey, I know. Please try and get some rest." "Mom, wait." But I ended the call and dropped my phone on the seat. Chloe's car was idling outside a sleek glass skyscraper. She put the car in park but kept the engine on, turning to look at me. Marcus Thorne. He was my divorce lawyer's partner. I just sent him a text. He drove back to the office. "He's waiting for us on the top floor. Thank you, Chloe." "Don't thank me yet," she replied, her voice tight. "And I am coming up with you." Mr. Thorne looked to be in his late 40s, with a tailored suit and eyes that missed nothing. He handed me a bottle of water and slid a divorce petition across his huge mahogany desk. "Mrs. Croft, read this over. Then you can tell me exactly what you require. Assets, holdings, custody." Each line felt like a small death, but I pushed through. "I want all properties," I said, my voice flat. "And I get full sole custody of Alex. Julian can keep his shares in the company, but I want a 30% stake in his new Olympus Tower project, placed in a trust under my exclusive control." Thorne raised an eyebrow. "A controlled trust on a flagship development. That's an aggressive opening. I don't see Mr. Croft ever agreeing to those terms." I unlocked my phone, opened the photo, and pushed it across the desk. "Tell him if he refuses to sign, this picture goes out to the entire board of directors by sunrise." Thorne didn't even blink. He glanced at the screen for half a second and gave a single sharp nod. I understand." Chloe, who was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, went rigid, her expression a mixture of fear and admiration. We had been friends for 15 years. She had never seen me like this. But then, she never had to. When did Amelia Croft ever need to be ruthless? For almost 20 years, I was the ideal, supportive wife of a real estate titan. I managed our homes, raised our amazing son, and acted the charming hostess for countless business dinners. When his first deal almost collapsed, I sold the beach house my father left me to give him the capital. When his mother fell ill, I was the one who coordinated her care for 3 long years, as if she were my own mom. Everyone always said how lucky Julian Croft was to have me. And what did I receive being so perfect? A secret 4-year-old son with his lead architect, and I was clearly the last person to know. I looked over the petition one last time and reached for the pen, but just before I signed, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up, Alex. I paused for a moment, then I answered the call. "Mom, where are you?" Alex's voice was different. It had a hard, steady edge I had never heard before. "I'm just taking care of some things, sweetheart. Are you with a lawyer?" It wasn't a question. It was a fact. I glanced at Chloe. She frantically shook her head, mouthing, "I didn't tell him." "Alex, just listen." "Mom, I know about William." Caleb's voice was dead calm, completely emotionless. "I found everything. Security footage from the garage, hotel receipts, the lease on her place, even the kids' preschool bills. I have it all. And I'm giving you a present." "A present?" I asked, hearing the clatter of his keyboard. He laughed, a cold, empty sound. "A present our father will regret for the rest of his life. That was hours ago. Now, it was nearly 6 p.m. as we left the attorney's office. My sister, Sarah, offered to get dinner, but I just shook my head and told her to drive me home. Home. The word felt like acid in my mouth. William and I had lived in this house for 2 decades. I chose every detail, from the blueprints to the curtains. He once stood in this very spot, took my hand, and whispered, "Home is wherever you are." I see now how hollow those words were. As we reached the gate, I saw his silver Porsche in the drive. Sarah tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her face a mask of concern. "Elena, call me. Any time." "I mean it." I stepped out of the car. The click of my heels on the flagstone path was the only sound before the door read my thumbprint and swung open. The warm glow of the living room spilled into the foyer. William was on the couch watching the stock market ticker on TV. A glass of bourbon sat next to him. He heard the door but didn't bother to turn around. "Where have you been? The maid said you left hours ago." I dropped my bag and sank into the armchair opposite him, my spot. Every night I'd just sit here, fix his drink, and nod along as he talked about corporate deals. I was never meant to grasp. I once believed that was contentment, the silent rhythm of a stable marriage. Now, the memory alone made me sick. "William Prescott." I said his full name, something I hadn't done in 2 decades. It was always Will, or Darling, that finally made him look up. He glanced away from the screen, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He was a good-looking man, still fit at 52, thanks to a personal trainer. He could make any suit look like $1,000,000, and Vanessa Shaw was 10 years my junior. Of course a woman like that would want a man like him. I unlocked my phone, found the picture, and tossed it onto the coffee table. It showed him with Vanessa, holding a small boy, a perfect little family. The phone landed with a sharp crack. William looked at the screen, and for a moment his confident mask slipped. But he wasn't afraid, not in the slightest. He simply leaned back, raised his glass, took a slow sip, and looked me in the eye. "So, you're hiring private investigators now?" he asked, his tone impossibly steady. I nearly choked on my own rage. "Our son is brilliant, William. He's the one who discovered this. You're cheating on me in my own city, and our son had to be the one to find out." He took another sip, placed the glass on a coaster, and after a long, quiet moment, he laughed. "Well, if you know, then I guess we can stop pretending." That single sentence shattered the last bit of control I had. He said it so calmly, like he was commenting on the market. "How old is the child?" My voice was barely a whisper. "He's 5. And her? Vanessa Shaw. You've met her. I know I've met her." My fingernails dug into the leather of the armchair. "I'm asking who she is to you." William stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out into the night. His reflection stared back at me. "She's the mother of my other son," he said. Plain and simple. I began to laugh. My mouth was trembling, but a brittle smile was fixed on my face. "Your son? Then what is Caleb? Who is he to you?" "He's your son, who just turned 18. How many family dinners did you miss? Every trophy he won, every fever he had, where were you?" William turned from the window, a flash of annoyance in his eyes. "Elena, don't be dramatic. Caleb is my son, that's not changing. But Leo needs a father, Leo." So the boy had a name. I snatched the bourbon glass from the table and threw it into the fireplace. It exploded, spraying whiskey and glass across the marble hearth. William actually flinched. What do you think you're doing? What am I doing? William, why don't you tell me what I'm doing? I rose and stalked toward him until we were face to face. I have been your wife for 20 years. I gave you a son. I helped you build this company from the ground up. I took care of your own mother as she was dying, and this is how you repay me. For 5 years. You've been lying to my face for 5 years. I never wanted to lie, he said, his voice infuriatingly calm. I just didn't know how to tell you. You didn't know how. I swung my arm back and slapped him across the face, hard. The sound echoed in the silent room. His head snapped to the side, a red handprint already appearing on his cheek. He turned his head back slowly, his eyes now like chips of ice. Elena, calm down. I am perfectly calm. I pulled the divorce petition from my purse and slapped it on the table. Sign it, William. Our lawyers meet tomorrow at 10 a.m. The house, Caleb's trust, and a 20% stake in your company are mine. I get everything else. William grabbed the papers and began to read. His expression turned thunderous when he got to the section on assets. 20%? Have you lost your mind? You're the one who's lost his mind. Now stop wasting my time. I held up my phone again. You don't sign, and this whole story, photos and all, goes straight to your board of directors, your shareholders, and the press. All the colour drained from his face. You wouldn't dare. Watch me. We stood there, locked in a silent battle. The only noise was the grandfather clock ticking in the hall. Finally, William let out a long breath and threw the papers down. Fine, 10 a.m. tomorrow. But this stock arrangement, I need to review it. I pulled a pen from my purse and held it out, then write that in. And if you refuse, you forfeit all parental rights to Caleb. Sign it now. William stared at the pen, his eyes burning with fury, but he kept it in check. He snatched it from my hand, scrawled a note on the T-Sporsk, and slammed it down. Elena, you are going to regret this. The only thing I regret is the day I married you. Without another glance, I took the agreement and walked upstairs. I locked the bedroom door, let my purse fall, and sank to the floor with my back against the cool wood. All the strength I had vanished. My legs trembled. Tears streamed down my face, but I made no sound, biting down on my lip until I tasted salt and iron. My phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. Mom! Saw everything on the security feed. Nice right hook. I looked up and saw the tiny camera in the corner. He had installed the new system. I'd completely forgotten about it. I dried my eyes and recorded a voice message, forcing my voice to sound steady. Go to sleep, honey. Tomorrow is a long day. Please get something to eat. His reply was immediate. Tomorrow's business can wait. Mom, I need you in my room. I paused for a moment. His door had been shut, his light off. I thought he was sleeping. Guess not. I took a steadying breath, pushed myself up, washed my face, and went to his room. I knocked gently. It's open, he said. The moment I walked in, I stopped cold. Caleb's room was usually a disaster zone of circuit boards and wires. Tonight, it was perfectly clean. His large whiteboard was covered in printouts, photos, and a complex timeline. In the centre, in bright red ink, were 3 words, Phase 2 engaged. He sat facing away from me, staring at a bank of 3 massive monitors. The screens showed lines of code, spreadsheets, and live camera feeds. I recognized the logo for Prescott Global on some of the documents. Caleb, what is all this? He swiveled in his chair and removed his glasses. Without them, his eyes shaped exactly like his father's had a cold, calculating look that was truly unsettling on a young man. It's leverage, he said. Leverage for Dad's other crimes. His words knocked the wind right out of me. The air in the room felt thin. I just stood in the doorway, staring at the screens of endless data, unable to speak. My son, my 18-year-old, was sitting there with the focused intensity of a general plotting a war. He was a complete stranger, not the boy who used to beg for an extra hour of video games. What did you just say? I asked, finally moving to close the door. I dropped my voice to a whisper. What other crimes? Caleb put his glasses back on. His fingers flew across the keyboard and a new window popped up, full of documents and video files. Mom, he said, you need to see this. Caleb turned back to his monitors. Mom, you need to see this, but promise me you'll stay calm. I perched on the corner of his bed, wringing my hands in my lap, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "Okay, Caleb, I promise." He inhaled sharply and clicked open a file. A massive spreadsheet filled the screen, rows and rows of numbers stretching on and on. I saw a company name, one of William's holding companies I'd never seen before. The routing number was for a Swiss bank. Dad set this up 6 years ago. Caleb indicated several lines glowing in red. Since then, he's laundered nearly $30 million through this one account. $30 million? The number was so big it didn't feel real. My head started to throb. I knew Prescott Global was a giant. I knew William was obscenely wealthy. But 30 million, siphoned off into a secret account? Where did the money go, Caleb? He didn't speak. He just clicked on another icon. A property title for a luxury chalet in Aspen, Colorado appeared. And the owner's name? Vanessa Shaw. Bought 2 years ago. "This place is worth $7 million, Mom." He paid in cash. Caleb's voice was completely flat. The wire transfer came from the Swiss account. He then pulled up a third window. An oceanfront villa in Malibu. This account was in Isabel Croft's mother's name, but the money trail was the same. $10 million. Next file. An Aston Martin and a custom Escalade, both registered to her. Another $500,000, gone. I just stared as he clicked through document after document. Each one landed like a punch. 5 years, $40 million. A Hamptons beach house, a Manhattan penthouse, luxury cars. He built a whole other life for her, with our family's money, with my son S. inheritance. He wasn't just hiding it, Mom. Leo switched screens, showing a complex chart of Blackwood Holdings' corporate shell game. Look, 2 years ago, Dad moved 5% of his personal shares through this mess of accounts, directly to Isabel Croft. The primary shell company is registered in the Caymans. The director is a paid puppet, but the true beneficiary is Isabel. My hands started to shake. 5% of Blackwood Holdings that had to be over 100 million. Add the 40 million in cash and property, and my husband had secretly handed over $140 million to this woman. How did you find all of this? Leo adjusted his glasses, a ghost of a smile on his face, a terrifying mix of teenage ego and cold fury. Mum, what do you think I do in my room all day? I built the entire smart home system for this place. Dad's laptop, his phone, his home office computer, they all run on my network. He bragged his encryption was impenetrable. To me, it was a welcome mat. He paused, then added, besides, he got lazy. He accessed his Cayman accounts from his office right here in the house, multiple times. The encrypted keys, saved password, authentication codes, it was all just sitting on his hard drive, waiting for me. I was stunned. Should I feel proud or absolutely horrified? My 17-year-old son had just methodically taken apart his own father's secret world. But then I thought, what had Ethan ever really done for him? A man who was barely a father has no claim to his son's loyalty. And there's this. Leo opened an audio file. It was a recording from the smart speaker in the study, an office I knew too well. It was Ethan's private home office. Ethan was on a call, and the voice on the other end was Isabel S. Her tone was smooth, like silk wrapped around a knife. Ethan, darling, everything is ready for the annual gala. You are still going to announce my appointment to the Foundation's board, correct? Ethan S.'s voice was closer, that easy, confident charm of his filling the room. Of course, my love. It's all set. The entire board will be there. All the press, you'll get up, say a few words, and I'll make the big reveal. And what if she decides to make a scene about the divorce? Isabel S.'s question was perfect line. Your wife isn't some fool you can just push aside. Ethan let out a short, brutal laugh, a laugh so cold it made my skin crawl. Her? Clara? He scoffed. She's a decoration. She's lived in my penthouse for 20 years with everything she could ever want given to her. She has no idea how the real world works. The only reason I stayed was to give Leo a stable childhood. Don't worry, now that he's almost an adult, it's time for the next chapter. If she's smart, she'll take the generous offer I make and vanish quietly. And if she's not smart, Isabel asked, her voice dropping to a seductive purr. Ethan's voice became a conspiratorial whisper. one the hidden microphone picked up with perfect clarity. Then I'll cut her off without a cent. Every single thing she has is in my name. Her parents are gone. Who on earth is going to help her fight me? The audio file ended, but I could still picture his confident, condescending smirk. He was still so handsome, with that killer smile and easy charm. But hearing him now, a deep, paralyzing cold spread through my veins. "Mom!" Leo spun his chair to face me, his eyes locked on mine. His expression was steady, but I saw his leg bouncing under the desk, humming with nervous energy. "I found all this 3 days ago. Do you know how hard it's been to sit on this?" I reached out and smoothed his hair. It was dark like mine, not that sandy blonde colour like Ethan's. They always called him the observant one. Who knew that behind that quiet gaze he was gathering ammunition? "Do you see now why I begged you not to sign anything?" he asked. "I thought you were just worried he'd try to leave me with pennies." Leo shook his head, a dark smile on his face. "It's much worse than that, Mom." He switched screens again, bringing up one last document. It was an encrypted email. The sender was Ethan Blackwood. The recipient was Marcus Thorne. I knew that name. Marcus was head of legal at Blackwood Holdings, one of Ethan S.'s most loyal attack dogs. The email was short, but every word was a blade. "Marcus, we're proceeding with the divorce strategy. By law, if we can demonstrate marital misconduct by Clara, I can drastically reduce her settlement. I need you to start creating the necessary evidence now. Also, after the gala, I want you to prepare the papers for Julian's legal recognition. He must be formally added to the Blackwood Family Trust. Regards, Ethan." I read the email over and over, until the words blurred. Ethan wasn't just leaving me. He was planning a legal trap to disown me entirely. He was going to invent an affair. Me, Clara Vance, the woman who spent 20 years being the perfect society wife and mother. What lie could he even create? And worse, the part about Julian. Ethan didn't just want Isabel's son to have our money. He planned to make him a legal heir and steal my son's inheritance. My hand shot out and gripped Leo's wrist, my knuckles turning white. "Leo, he is not getting away with any of this." "I know, Mom. He isn't." Leo gently placed his other hand over mine. "That's why I made you wait 3 days. He stood up and went to a large digital whiteboard on his wall. On it was a detailed timeline starting 3 days ago and ending next Saturday. He tapped the final date, the Blackwood Holdings Annual Charity Gala. It's at the Metropolitan Museum Ballroom. Leo said every major investor, business partner, and half of the city's press will be there. He circled the date. Dad is planning to make 2 huge announcements. First, the launch of their new global initiative. And second, Isabel Croft's promotion to the Foundation S board. Leo turned to me, his smile unreadable, like a hunter closing in. But he has no idea there will be a third announcement. He pulled a small, sleek box from a drawer and opened it. Inside was a tiny microphone, small enough to pin on a lapel. "I've already compromised the museum's entire audio-visual network," Leo said casually. "So, what do you want them to see and hear? You just need to tell me." I reached out and picked up the device, its cool metal shocking my skin. "Mom." He looked right at me, his eyes burning with intensity. "Mom." Then he said it, his voice low, but sharper than any blade. "I'm not asking you to fight for a bigger settlement. I'm asking you to utterly destroy him." The words hung in the air between us. I finally stood and walked to the digital whiteboard, my eyes tracing the timeline. The date Isabel was first hired at the foundation. The date her son was born. The date the first Cayman Islands account was opened. The date of every transfer, every property purchased, every secret wire. It was all there, a battle plan laid out with cold precision. I turned back around, the tiny microphone clutched in my hand. Leo smiled, and then he did something he had never, ever done before. He made a fist and held it out for me to bump. I made my own fist and bumped his. Let's burn it all down. Chapter 4, The Longest Week. I didn't sleep at all that night. Lying there in our massive penthouse bedroom, the space next to me felt like a frozen wasteland. Ethan was gone, and I had no clue when he'd even left. Maybe he was at the office. Maybe he was with Isabel. Honestly, I couldn't summon the energy to care anymore. I just laid in that king-size bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every piece of his betrayal my son had shown me. When the sun finally came up, I gave up trying. I showered and put on a sharp, black sheath dress. Doing my makeup, I saw a stranger staring back a perfect mask with cold, hollow eyes. Who was I? The elegant, perfect wife of Ethan Blackwood, the ever-gracious Clara. People always praised my quiet dignity, my endless patience, and what had it gotten me? 5 years of his lies, $140 million of our fortune stolen, and a divorce strategy designed to leave me ruined. Applying a dark red lipstick, I met my own eyes in the mirror. Clara Vance, you let him walk all over you for 20 years, but you reawake now. At 7:30 I went downstairs. Our housekeeper, Maria, had set the breakfast table. Fresh croissants with imported jam, Ethan's favourite. For 2 decades, every breakfast was chosen for him. All I ever really wanted was black coffee, and maybe some fruit, but I never said a word. It seemed so pathetic now. Mr. Blackwood didn't come home last night. Should I try his mobile? Maria asked. No, that's all right. I lifted my mug, taking a deliberate sip. My voice was completely steady. And Maria, from now on, don't bother making his breakfast. Just an espresso and toast for me. That's it. Maria paused, feeling the temperature in the room drop, but she knew better than to ask why. She simply nodded. Yes, ma'am. After I ate, I walked to Leo's room and knocked. Silence. I eased the door open and saw him asleep at his desk, face down on his keyboard. His glasses sat crooked on his head. His 3 monitors were alive, streaming rows of complex data. I went to shake him, and he shot up in his chair. Mom, what time is it? 7:40. Why aren't you in bed? He rubbed his eyes, his voice thick with sleep. I was decrypting the servers for Nightfall, Dad's secret side project. A lot of these internal expense reports are going to be very, very useful. He typed a few commands, and the screens filled with documents. An expense report showed a trip to Monaco for a conference, but the hotel receipt was for a couple's suite. Below were dozens of other files. One from a trip to Japan with a charge for a Cartier necklace labelled Client Gift. Another detailed a private jet rental to Aspen. Leo had highlighted the dates on every single one. Look at the dates. Last October, when he filed this, Dad told you he was at a tech conference in Berlin. He was skiing Aspen with her. And the year before, on your anniversary, he said he was with venture capitalists in London. He was actually on a yacht with her in Italy. I just stared at the proof, each date a perfect match for one of Marcus's business trips. This whole thing was a 6-year history of his affair, laid out in black and white. But Leo wasn't done. He opened another folder. Mom, look at this. I found it last night. It's an internal security review for Sterling Innovations. On the screen was a document. Security Review, Sterling Innovations 2024, Confidential. 2 paragraphs were highlighted in bright yellow. I leaned closer, my heart pounding in my chest. The first one read, Our review indicates a significant diversion of corporate funds. CEO Marcus Sterling has been routing R&D capital through shell vendors to finance an unsanctioned project. The estimated total exceeds $50 million. The second one said, The vetting for the new VP of Strategy nominee is incomplete. The resume submitted by Sofia Romero contains falsified credentials. Furthermore, her undisclosed personal relationship with CEO Marcus Sterling is a serious violation of corporate policy. I looked at Leo, absolutely speechless. How did you get this? It was on his personal encrypted drive, but he routed it through the main company network. The security is tough, but honestly, it was like a puzzle for a kid. I just took it apart. He said it so casually, but I could see the exhaustion etched around his eyes. He'd been at this all night. The security team flagged this 2 days ago. It hasn't reached the board yet. Dad is trying to get them to delete those 2 parts before he submits the final report. So it wasn't just an affair. He committed serious financial crimes. Exactly, Leo smirked. 50 million in wire fraud. Under federal law, that's enough to put him away for at least a decade. And that's before they add money laundering. Mom, I don't just want him to pay for this. I want him completely destroyed. I leaned against the desks, folding my arms and thinking. Outside, the morning Miami traffic was starting to build. The light caught my son's face. He was still so young, 16 years old. At his age, other kids are worrying about their SAT scores and dates for the winter formal. My son was mapping out his own father's downfall. Leo, I started, my voice shaking just a little. Do you really hate him that much? Leo wouldn't look at me. He took off his glasses, cleaning them on the hem of his shirt with his head down. I couldn't see his eyes. He finally spoke. Mom, remember in 8th grade when I won the national coding competition? First place. The day of the finals, I reminded him 5 separate times. He swore he would be there. I waited by the door for almost an hour after it was over. When everyone else had left, you were the only one still sitting there with me. He put his glasses back on and his eyes met mine. They were red with fatigue. After that day, I stopped hating him. You can't be disappointed by someone if you don't expect anything from them. But Mom, his face hardened, all the youth draining from his voice. He should never have hurt you. That's the one thing I can't ever forgive. My eyes started to burn. I turned away before a tear could fall, taking a deep breath to compose myself. Now wasn't the time. I can fall apart later. Okay? I placed my hand on his shoulder. The day after tomorrow, at the Aura launch party, I need everything USGIV bundled into one package. You take care of all the tech, and I will take care of the show. Leo's face broke into a grin, and for a flash, he looked just like his father, but also completely different. Marcus' smile was a weapon. Leo's was pure, cold revenge. Mom, I have something for you. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a small jewellery box. Inside lay a stunning platinum and sapphire brooch. It has a high-definition micro camera and microphone built in, Leo explained. It's got a 120-degree field of view and picks up audio from 30 feet. Just press the clasp to start the live feed directly to my laptop. I've already built a back door into the Fontaineblau's entire media system. The instant you push that clasp, every screen in that ballroom will broadcast exactly what I send to them. I lifted the brooch from the box. It felt heavy and cool, so beautiful you would never guess its hidden purpose. The sapphire in the centre was deep and cold, like the ocean at night. You're a little genius. If you put this much work into your school applications, you'd be at MIT by now. Leo just laughed. What's the point of that? The real fun is helping you tear Dad's entire world down around him. I couldn't stop myself from laughing with him. It was the first real laugh I'd had since yesterday. That afternoon, I went through my day like normal. I had my nails done and got a facial. The aesthetician told me I didn't look a day over 30. I just smiled, thinking, after tomorrow night, everyone will know that Lena Sterling isn't just well kept, she's a weapon. Around 4 p.m, my phone started buzzing. Marcus's name lit up the screen. I let it ring twice before I picked up, keeping my voice breezy and light. Hello? Lena, his voice was filled with surprise. He was obviously expecting me to be a sobbing mess, not this calm. About this divorce, I think we need to talk. We shouldn't file the petition with the court tomorrow. A cold smile formed on my lips, but my voice stayed sweet. Oh? A change of heart? Because I certainly haven't had one. He hesitated, searching for the right words. I just feel... We've been together for 20 years. There's no need for this to become some ugly, public spectacle. We can handle the assets civilly. There's no reason to rush. Be civil. He just wanted a delay. A delay until the security review was buried deep. A delay until his product launch was a massive success. A delay until Sophia's promotion was a done deal. Once all his ducks were in a row, he wouldn't want to be civil. He'd want to crush me. Well, I leaned back into the sofa, crossing one leg over the other. My voice was like silk. You're right. 20 years is a long time. It is much better to end things gracefully. We don't have to file tomorrow. But my lawyer is proceeding, and my demands haven't changed. There was a long silence. Lena, you can't be serious, he finally managed to say. What on earth did he expect? I ended the call. Outside, the lights of the Miami skyline were starting to glitter against the twilight. I sat there, phone in my hand, feeling an incredible sense of peace. It was the calm before the hurricane. In 2 days at the launch party for his precious Aura software, I, Lena Sterling, would wear my most stunning dress and my tallest heels. I would walk into that ballroom, and I would bring his whole corrupt world crashing to the ground. My husband Marcus thought he had a quiet, docile wife. He is about to meet the woman that he created. But he had no idea that my son Leo and I were about to change the rules of the game entirely. The next morning, the day before Marcus's big product launch, the buzzer rang through our Miami penthouse. 7:30 in the morning. Our housekeeper was off for the day, so it was just Leo and me. I slipped on a silk robe and went to the door, assuming it was a package. But when I swung the door open, my blood ran cold. It was Sophia Romero. She was dressed in a sharp white pantsuit, a Birkin bag on her arm, and holding the hand of a small boy. A little boy dressed in a miniature blazer, his dark hair perfectly styled. His wide, brown eyes stared up at me with pure childhood innocence. Behind them, a nanny stood with a set of expensive luggage. "Mrs. Sterling!" Sophia's smile was blindingly white. Her voice was pure saccharine. "I am so very sorry to impose. Marcus was over at my apartment last night, and he left in such a rush that he forgot his access card for the lab. I figured I would bring it over so Liam could give it to his daddy, and we could show our son where his father lives." Her words were like bees buzzing in my ears. My apartment, where his father lives. Each phrase was a deliberate sting, but I didn't even blink. I just smiled. "Is that so? Well, by all means, come in." As I stepped back, I saw a flash of irritation in Isabella's eyes. This wasn't going to plan. She wanted a fight, screaming, a total meltdown from the wronged wife. She strutted past me with her son, her Louboutin heels tapping a victory march on our oak floors. The boy gawked at everything, his eyes huge, and asked, "Mommy, is this where Daddy lives?" "It's like a castle." "Yes, my love. And soon this will be our new home," she cooed, her words a poisoned dart aimed right at my heart. I shut the door, choosing to just watch her little performance. Inside my head, a string of truly vicious insults was taking shape, but I kept my smile perfectly in place. "Please, have a seat. Can I get you anything? A glass of water?" "Oh, don't trouble yourself, Mrs. Vance." Isabella sank into our cream suede sofa like she was testing it for purchase, crossing her long legs. "I'm only here to drop something off for Julian, then I'll be out of your hair." She said she was leaving, yet she settled in for the long haul. The nanny let the boy, Leo, toddle over to a bookshelf. He pressed his palms against the glass, trying to grab a small golden model of Julian's first skyscraper. My jaw tightened, but I stayed silent. Isabella pulled Julian's platinum credit card from her designer handbag. She slid it onto the marble coffee table, then gave me a smug, knowing little smile. "Elena, there's actually something else I was hoping we could talk about." "Here it is," I thought. "The opening act is over. Time for the main event." "I'm listening." I sat in the armchair across from her, projecting an aura of complete control. She straightened her designer jacket, leaning in like we were old friends about to share gossip. "Elena, I know you're aware of Julian and me, and I can only guess how painful this must be for you. Honestly, I feel just awful about this whole situation." "Awful," she said, while looking like she'd just won the lottery. I just waited. "But you know how these things happen. Julian and I have been in love for 5 years. Leo is nearly 5. You're a mother, Elena. You must understand wanting to do what's right for your child. I can't have him growing up ashamed of his parents' relationship. He deserves a proper family." As she spoke, her eyes began to glitter with crocodile tears. It was a masterful performance, truly. So I cut right through it, my voice dead calm. "What is it that you want, Isabella?" She bit her lip, a perfect portrait of a suffering woman. "Let him go. This marriage is over. Continuing this lie just hurts everyone. If you'll agree to divorce, we'll ensure you're compensated very, very generously." That phrase echoed in the quiet room. Compensated generously. I nearly laughed out loud. I, Elena Vance, had been with Julian for 15 years. My family's money was the seed capital for his first development project. My father's connections got him his first round of investors. I had poured my life into building his real estate empire and our family, and now his mistress was offering me compensation like I was a secretary he'd fired. "Miss Rossi," I began, my voice dropping 10 degrees. "Are you finished?" She actually flinched, stunned by my change in tone. "Mrs. Vance, I just came here to be honest." "Honest?" I gave a short, sharp laugh. "Miss Rossi, an honest woman wouldn't use her child as a shield to ambush another woman in her own home. So, which is it? The credit card or the drama?" Isabella's smirk vanished, replaced instantly by her wounded victim mask. "Elena, you're twisting my words. I simply wanted..." A voice from the grand staircase cut her off. We both turned. Ethan was standing there, leaning on the banister in a simple grey hoodie. His hair was a mess, like any other college kid home for the weekend, but his eyes were sharp. Those eyes, so much like his father's, scanned over Isabella and Leo with a cool, detached appraisal that finally landed on the credit card. "Who's this?" he asked, his voice neutral, though he knew perfectly well. At the sight of him, Isabella's entire posture changed. She knew exactly who Ethan was. The heir, 20 years old, and nobody's fool. "Hello, you must be Ethan. Your father speaks so highly of you. You're even more handsome in person." Isabella stood, turning on a bright, practiced smile. Ethan didn't even blink. He walked down the stairs, one slow step at a time, and stopped near the bookshelf. Leo was on his tiptoes, his small fingers finally reaching the golden skyscraper model, making it rock on its base. Ethan's hand shot out, steadying it instantly. "Hey, buddy," he said, his voice quiet but carrying an edge of ice. "Don't touch things that don't belong to you." The little boy's face crumpled, and he burst into tears. Isabella lunged, scooping him up and glaring at me over his head. "Mrs. Vance, he's just a child. It's a stupid model. Was that really necessary?" Before I could reply, Ethan spoke. "Miss Rossi." He said her name like it was something distasteful. "You said you came to drop something off. The card is on the table. I think it's time for you to go." Isabella's carefully constructed face finally twisted into a genuine, ugly sneer. She had clearly expected me to be an easy target, not for the heir to shut her down completely. She clutched Leo tighter, her act of the gentle mother evaporating. "Elena." She dropped the formality. You see what he's like? Fine, let's quit the games. Julian loves me, and this house is going to be mine soon enough. Walk away with some dignity, and you'll get a very generous settlement. But if you fight me, I swear you will walk away with absolutely nothing." She then pulled a cashier's check from her purse and slapped it down on the table. I glanced at it. $500,000. Julian had just closed $1 billion waterfront deal, and his mistress was offering me the catering budget. I stared at the check for a long moment, then slowly reached out and picked it up. A triumphant, vicious smile spread across Isabella's face. She actually believed I was taking it. She thought my life's work was worth $500,000. Then I ripped the check in half. "Miss Rossi." I stood, towering over her. My voice was calm, but it was the calm of a coming blizzard. "Today, you brought a child into my home to try and emotionally blackmail me. I can forgive that. I'll chalk it up to your obvious and growing desperation. But I'm going to give you one piece of free advice, and I suggest you listen carefully." I took a single step towards her, right into her personal space, and spoke each word with precision. "This is my home, the home of Elena Vance, and until I am the one who files for divorce, neither you nor your son will ever set foot in it again. Now take your things and get the hell out." Isabella's face was a mask of pure rage. She grabbed Leo's hand, snatched her purse, and stormed to the door. She spun around, her eyes filled with hate. "You are going to regret this, Elena. You'll see," she spat, before slamming the door so hard a painting rattled on the wall. Ethan, my son, had been perfectly silent. He just held up his phone. He'd been recording the whole thing. Got it all. Every last word. He slipped it back into his pocket, a slow grin spreading across his face. "Mom, when you told her to get the hell out, that was epic." I felt the corner of my mouth twitch into a smile. "What about the card?" Ethan picked up the platinum card, flipping it over in his hand. A spark of amusement lit his eyes. Dad's emergency card. The joke is, he has a driver. He would never leave this at her apartment. It was a prop. To prove he spent the whole night with her. Exactly. Ethan tossed the card back on the table, except her little prop just backfired spectacularly. Dad's wallet has a tile tracker in it. She took the card, but she didn't get the wallet. I tracked it. The wallet was at her high-rise last night, yes, but his phone's GPS history shows he left her place around 11 p.m. He was at his Downton office until 4 in the morning, working. I just stood there, processing it all, and then I started to laugh. So Isabella was lying. Julian was with her, sure, but he didn't stay. He was there for a few hours, then went to work. She brought that card here to terrorize me, to sell a fantasy. Isabella is all talk. Ethan was right. The louder she gets, the weaker her position is. My husband Julian must have promised her everything, and now he's trying to backpedal. That's why she's panicking. I scoffed. A man like Julian only loves his own ambition. Isabella is just a temporary asset. Once her novelty wears off, she's gone. Did she honestly believe he'd divorce me and split his empire? Ethan nodded. So the real problem isn't her, it's him. And tomorrow, at his big project reveal, we're going to expose them both. I stood there, watching the sun rise over the city. The roses I'd planted on the terrace were in full bloom. Their scent usually calmed me. Ethan, what if this all goes wrong tomorrow at the launch event? It won't. His voice, just behind me, was completely steady. I'm managing the entire back end. The main presentation feed is being mirrored to 3 separate offshore servers. I already bypassed the venue's network security. Every exit, every emergency route, the audio-visual booth, I have control of everything. He stood beside me, holding up his tablet. A floor plan of the Presidio Convention Center was displayed, all access points marked. I'll be in a coffee shop right across the street. If he tries anything, I can be inside in under 3 minutes. And here, take this. He pulled a sleek, silver fountain pen from his pocket and pressed it into my hand. It's a dead man's switch. 1 click, and all the files we have are sent to the district attorney's office, the Chronicle, and every major newswire. If Julian makes a move and I can't stop him, just press the button. It all goes public. I took it. The metal felt cool and solid. Thank you. I looked at my son, my heart filled with both pride and a deep sadness. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Ethan looked away, suddenly awkward, the tips of his ears turning bright red. He glanced away, mumbling, "Okay, Mom, save the speech. Tomorrow's the big day." I messed up his hair with as a laugh. Outside the morning sun hit the gardenias. Tomorrow was payback. My name is Amelia Davenport. For 18 years, I swallowed my pride. For 3 days, I've held my fury. Tomorrow, on that stage, they will regret everything. Around 3 p.m., while steaming my blouse for the speech, my phone buzzed. Blocked number, but it looked official. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello, I'm trying to reach Amelia Davenport, Alex Vance's mother." The voice was calm, male, and professional. Speaking. "Who is this?" "My name is Mr. Sterling, head of admissions at the Alpinum Institute. I'm calling because a Mr. Marcus Vance submitted an application for your son, Alex, this morning. He wants to enroll him for his final year, and we just need to verify your consent." The steamer nearly dropped from my hand. "A transfer? Where exactly is this school?" "We are located in the Swiss Alps. It's a very prestigious boarding school. Mr. Vance applied for full-time residency, so he'd only return for major holidays." "A boarding school? In Switzerland?" Marcus was trying to ship my son to Switzerland. The day before his biggest presentation, he was trying to send his own son to another continent. Why was he so desperate to get Alex out of San Francisco? I took a deep breath, keeping my voice level. "Mr. Sterling, I was not aware of this application. Can you please tell me if my signature is on that form?" I heard papers shuffle. It only has Mr. Vance's signature. The second guardian line is empty, which is why we must call to confirm. "You are his mother, correct?" "I am telling you now. For the record, I do not give my consent. My son is not going to Switzerland. Please cancel that application immediately." "Understood, Mrs. Vance. We will return the documents to Mr. Vance. After hanging up, I was just frozen, the hot steamer in my hand. My reflection was a mask of pure fury. Marcus. He was trying to ship my son out of the country. I slammed it down to call Alex when my phone rang again. It was Sarah. "Amelia!" she yelled, her voice panicked. "Get to Alex's school, now! His counselor just called me. Someone's there filing withdrawal papers for him. They're in the admin office right now." My head was spinning. First Switzerland, now this, trying to pull him out of his school in the city. It was a two-pronged attack. Who is it? A lawyer for Marcus Vance. He has power of attorney. He claims Alex is transferring overseas and they need to process it immediately. I am on my way. I hung up, grabbed my keys and ran. On my way to the car, I sent Alex a voice note. "Honey, your father's lawyer is at school trying to withdraw you. I'm heading there to handle it. Don't leave the house. Stay put." As I pulled onto the street, my phone rang. It was Alex. "Mom, don't go to the school." His voice was calm. Too calm. It made my blood run cold. "What are you talking about?" "Your father's trying to ship you to Switzerland. He applied to that school and sent a lawyer to pull you out on the same day. He's trying to get rid of you." "I know," Alex said, and I could practically hear the smirk. "I blocked the withdrawal an hour ago. I have a back door into the school's admin portal. Any change to my file needs a code from my phone. His Lawyer S paperwork is completely useless." I slammed on the brakes so hard the car screeched. "What was that?" I said. "Dad isn't sending me anywhere. Mom, just turn around and come home. You're driving way too fast. I'll explain everything when you get here." I shut my eyes, my head against the seat, heart pounding in my chest. For a moment, I was terrified. Marcus went after my son. My son is my one weak spot. He could hide his assets, have his affair, even have a baby with her. I could handle all of it. But when he came for Alex, that crossed a line. I whipped the car around and sped home. Alex was waiting, 2 laptops glowing on the table. One screen was his school portal. The other showed a program I didn't recognize. "Look." He turned a laptop to me. Dad wasn't just trying to transfer me. He was doing this, too. It was an email sent from inside Vance Industries to a bunch of lawyers I'd never seen. I leaned in, the subject. "Confidential report on Amelia Davenport." My hands felt like ice. When did he send this? After 1 p.m. I stopped 3, but one got through. Look at the attachment. He opened a PDF, a thick, formal document. The cover read, in bold, "Report on the marital misconduct of Amelia Davenport." In the corner was the official letterhead of the Vance Industries legal team. I scrolled, my stomach churning. It was a list of more than a dozen false accusations. Photos of me at galas with colleagues were cropped to look intimate. They'd twisted old social media comments into something horrible. One part even claimed I was an unfit wife, citing our housekeeper Maria as a witness that I couldn't even manage our home. It was absolute trash, but every page had the firm's stamp and the signature of a Mr. Adler. The same lawyer who told Marcus to start collecting dirt on me. "He's using this in the divorce," Alex said softly. "I found it on the main server this morning. Last week, Dad hired a private investigator to find anything he could on you. He never intended to settle this quietly. He's been planning an all-out war." I sank onto the couch, gripping the armrests. So all his talk about a peaceful separation, it was just a lie. Exactly. He never wanted a truce. And that summer program in Zurich? That was to get rid of me. With me gone, he thought he could destroy you. Alex snapped the laptop shut and looked at me. For the first time, I saw real fury in my son S. eyes. "He's been scheming against you, and he tried to use me as a weapon? Mom, how can he even call himself a father?" I stared at that disgusting report, and a strange calm washed over me. The fear, the anger, it all just disappeared. All that was left was cold, sharp focus. It was like being plunged into ice water, a shock that made everything perfectly clear. Marcus had planned all of it. Hiding money, inventing lies, sending his son away. Every step was calculated to leave me with nothing, but he made one huge mistake. He assumed after 18 years his son would simply do as he was told. He couldn't have been more wrong. The person who actually raised Alex wasn't some famous architect named Marcus Vance. It was the woman who checked his code for bugs and made him soup when he was sick. I looked at my son. The evidence, the hidden accounts, the fraudulent contracts, everything. Is it enough to ruin him at the launch tomorrow? Alex adjusted his glasses, a cunning smile spreading across his face. Oh, it's more than enough, Mom. This is going to absolutely destroy him. Mom, you won't believe what I did. He wanted me in that Zurich program, right? Well, I used his personal account to pay the $500 deposit. I was stunned. Why would you do that? To make him think he's won, Alex said, a clever glint in his eye. He thinks I'm just going to pack my bags and go. He showed me his phone and email from Marcus. Alex, glad to see you're being mature. Once you're in Zurich, I'll make sure you're well taken care of. I'll be there, Dad. Wouldn't miss the launch for anything. The reply was instant. Of course. I've got a seat for you, right up front. I watched the exchange, a mix of sorrow and grim satisfaction. Marcus had no idea his own son was the Trojan horse. Alex closed his laptop. Mom, it's all set. Tomorrow, we show them everything. You just need to be there and remind them who the hell you are. I looked at him and gave a slow, determined nod. 20 years ago, I stopped being Amelia Davenport to become Mrs. Vance. Tomorrow, San Francisco will remember that name. The day came. Wednesday, 10 a.m., at the Waterfront Convention Center. Half an hour before the launch of Nexus, I sat at my vanity, clipping a brooch to my navy blue power suit. The outfit was a statement impeccably tailored, with heels that meant business. The woman in the mirror wasn't Marcus's wife. She was Amelia Davenport. My own eyes met me in the mirror, cold and steady as stone. Mom, you ready? Alex called. Ready, I stepped out. He wore a dark, fitted suit, looking less like my son and more like a young tech executive. He just nodded. Perfect. Let's go. The drive downtown was silent, thick with unspoken plans. As the bay flew past, I had one clear thought. 20 years ago, I married Marcus in a white dress. Today, in this suit, I was walking into his greatest triumph to end our marriage. A full circle. A block from the venue, Alex got out. He adjusted my brooch and spoke quietly. The mic is live and patched into their sound system. I'm off-site. When you need me to hijack the screens, just touch your left earring. That's the signal. I nodded. Mom, he added, his voice serious. I'm with you all the way. I squeezed his hand and headed for the doors. The lobby was a sea of Serrano Developments logos. Miami's real estate titans, all with VIP tags networked by the fountains. The second my heel touched the marble floor, I felt the entire room's focus snap to me. Is that Julian Serrano's wife? Elena? She never comes to these things. Damn, she looks incredible. I tuned out the whispers and walked straight into the grand ballroom. It was packed, at least 400 people. The front rows were saved for investors and the board. A giant screen behind the stage looped a CGI rendering of their new skyscraper, the Meridian. My seat was second row, on the aisle, a perfect view of the podium. The small plaque on the chair read, Elena Navarro, spouse of the founder. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. At 10 o'clock sharp, the house lights dimmed. A host took the stage, welcoming the crowd to the Meridian's grand unveiling. First the promo video, then the lead architect talked about the building's design. The audience clapped politely on cue. Everything was going exactly according to his plan. I waited patiently, then calmly reached up and adjusted my right earring. My bracelet gave a single faint vibration. Matezo was ready. 20 minutes crawled by. The lights dimmed again as the host came back. And now, please welcome the visionary founder of Serrano Developments, Mr. Julian Serrano. A spotlight hit Julian. He stood, smoothed his bespoke jacket, and walked to the stage like he owned the entire city. He looked energetic, powerful, not a day over 40, though he was almost 50. He got to the lectern and a hush fell over the room. Good morning, members of the board, our valued partners, and the press. Welcome to the future of Serrano Developments. His voice was deep and steady, the same one that once made me feel safe. Now it just sounded fake. Serrano Developments is only 20 years old, he continued. From a small contractor, we've become a global leader in luxury properties. And we owe it all to your unwavering faith in our vision. The room erupted in applause. He let it die down, but today is more than a new building. It's about a pivotal step forward for this company's leadership. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. This was the moment. In the front row sat his sister, Chloe Vance. She wore a stunning sapphire blue dress, her posture perfect. As Julie mentioned leadership, a smug smile touched her lips. After a unanimous board vote, I am ecstatic to announce Miss Chloe Vance as our senior partner. A spotlight swung onto Chloe. She stood, giving a small, rehearsed nod, her eyes shining with victory. Applause mixed with confused muttering. Isn't she just head of sales? You didn't hear? Julian raised his hand, beckoning her to the stage. That's when I rose to my feet. My simple black dress didn't matter. The movement alone silenced the entire room. A few board members glanced over their shoulders. One of them, a man my father used to golf with, gave a nervous smile. Alina, I had no idea you were coming. Then Julian saw me. His polished smile faltered for just a heartbeat. Alina, what are you doing? I gave him a calm smile, stepped into the aisle, and began walking towards the stage. The click of my heels echoed in the dead quiet. Everyone was staring. Phones were already being raised. Mr. Serrano, I said, my voice clear as I reached the steps. This is a truly historic day. So as your wife, I prepared a small presentation, a gift, for you and the board. Wouldn't you like to see it? Julian's composure cracked. He knew that look. For 15 years he'd seen it, but never with this icy fire in my eyes. Alina, we're on a very tight schedule. Let's discuss this later, in private. His tone was soft but full of menace. Chloe looked like she could kill me. I faced the crowd. Board members, press, my name is Elena Navarro, and I insist you witness this. The moment I stopped speaking, I tapped my right earring. On the massive screen behind Julian, the Serrano logo flickered and vanished into black. A moment of silence, and then a new image slammed to life, causing as a shockwave of gasps through the audience. It was a photograph, Julian Serrano, beaming, with his arm around a little boy. And clinging to his other arm, smiling like a devoted wife, was Chloe Vance. A caption appeared below them in bold white letters. The text simply read, "And their 4-year-old son." The ballroom erupted into absolute chaos. Board members shot to their feet. The press surged toward the stage like a tidal wave, cameras flashing non-stop, turning the scene into a strobe-lit disaster. Phones were held high, live streaming the entire meltdown for the world to see. This was a corporate scandal of the highest order. Julian's face turned ashen. He whipped around to look at the screen, a vein throbbing throb his temple as he screamed, "Shut it off! Who is doing this? Kill the feed right now!" He was yelling at the tech booth, but they were frozen. But the photo on the screen was locked in. I imagined Matteo a few blocks away in some cafe, holding all the strings. The feed was his. The chaos grew as journalists swarmed the stage, flashes blinding everyone. Mr. Harrison, the company's second biggest investor, got to his feet, his face like thunder. "Julian!" he bellowed. "Explain yourself right now!" Julian stumbled backward, pinned against the giant screen, the image of his betrayal looming over him. He looked like a cornered animal. "It's not real! It's a deep fake! I'm being framed!" he finally managed to scream. I stood in the aisle, arms crossed, watching his empire crumble. He was trapped. The proof of his lies was broadcast behind him for hundreds to see, some horrified, some furious, some thrilled. Sweat soaked his collar, his hair now a mess. The powerful man was gone. "It's a lie!" he shrieked, his voice cracking. "Someone is trying to ruin me! Shut it down!" But the techs were helpless. The image remained. Reporters were now a chaotic mob before the stage. Camera flashes popped like fireworks. Mr. Harrison, his face turning a deep, dangerous purple, pointed his silver-topped cane right at Julian. "Julian, is this true? Have you completely lost your mind?" Other investors were shouting above the noise. "What the hell is this, Serrano? You owe every last one of us an explanation!" Julian's lips were trembling. Sweat poured down his temples, soaking the collar of his expensive shirt. He glanced instinctively at his sister Chloe. The woman who was just celebrating her success now looked like she'd seen a ghost, collapsed in her chair. Her white pantsuit was blinding under the camera flashes. A journalist saw her and shoved a mic in her face. "Miss Vance, is that you in the photo? Are you sleeping with your own brother? Is that his secret child?" Chloe threw her hands up to hide her face and screamed, "Get that camera away from me! No, that's not me!" She was hysterical, a total mess, looking nothing like the company's polished head of sales. Her own colleagues were literally leaning away from her, as if her disgrace were contagious. I watched the entire catastrophe unfold with zero pity. A cold, clean satisfaction settled over me like a sip of ice water on a blistering day. But I wasn't finished. I tapped my phone's screen again. The image changed. Now, it displayed the financial records my brother Matteo had found. Bank statements from the Cayman Islands and a 6-year history of transfers that added up to $40 million. It was all laid out with brutal clarity. Every single payment was linked to real estate, supercars, and luxury items, all registered in Chloe Vance's name. The text on the screen read, "It is confirmed Julian Serrano used an offshore account to embezzle $40 million of marital and corporate assets. These funds were used to purchase a Miami penthouse, a yacht, luxury cars, and other gifts for his sister and mistress, Chloe Vance. See transaction details on the right." The room exploded once more. Mr. Harrison shoved through the reporters, snatched a microphone from the podium and yelled, his voice shaking with rage, "Julian Serrano, did you embezzle our investment funds? Is our money part of that $40 million? Answer me now." Julian was completely paralyzed. He opened his mouth, then closed it, no words coming out. I tapped my phone one final time. The screen showed a hidden camera feed from his home study. Julian stood behind Chloe, a hand on her shoulder. "What if she refuses to sign over her house?" Chloe asked. Julian just smirked, his cruel voice filling the ballroom. "Elena, she's a trophy wife. If she's smart, she'll take the settlement and disappear. If not, I'll toss her out onto the street with nothing." If anyone still had doubts, this video sealed his fate. The man on that screen was undeniably Julian. His face, his voice, it was him. The words "trophy wife" and "toss her out with nothing" landed like a body blow. Mr. Harrison was shaking with fury. He raised his cane, pointing it directly at Julian. "So this is what you've been up to? Promoting your own sister to partner? And what about the zoning fraud? What in God's name is all of that about?" That final question made the entire ballroom fall silent for a second before it erupted with even greater fury. Zoning fraud? 3 financial journalists nearly jumped out of their skin. "Mr. Harrison, did you say zoning fraud? Is there a public corruption probe into Serrano developments?" Harrison knew he'd made a mistake, but the damage was done. He took a deep breath and faced the press. "Since it's all coming out anyway, I won't deny it. My investigator's report came in yesterday. Marcus Thord used shell companies to manipulate stock prices before our last 3 acquisitions were announced. We're talking about $80 million in illegal profits. The evidence is ironclad. Now, even the junior developers in the back looked shocked. People were standing up, covering their mouths, their phones recording everything. Marcus stumbled back against the giant presentation screen, as if his spine had just turned to liquid. His face wasn't just pale, it was grey. "Isabella! The feds are here!" My brother Leo's quiet voice was in my ear. I glanced toward the main auditorium doors. 6 people in suits and tactical gear were making their way inside. The letters FBI were emblazoned in bright yellow on their vests, and they were flanked by SPD detectives. As they entered, the buzzing crowd parted for them like a wave. Every single phone camera in the auditorium spun in their direction. The tech media was going into a meltdown. This was about to become the biggest Silicon Valley scandal in years. The lead federal agent, a man in his 40s with a face like stone, marched right onto the stage and held up a warrant. "Marcus Thorne, you're under investigation for securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. You need to come with us." Before Marcus could react, a detective was already moving toward Ava. She was frantic, grabbing her clutch and trying to bolt. "What is this? I didn't do anything." Avachen, you are being investigated as an accessory to conspiracy and securities fraud. Please place your hands behind your back. I can begin to describe the feeling of that massive weight, the one that had been suffocating me for years, suddenly lifting. All of that pressure came from Marcus. The lies, the betrayal, the gaslighting, the complete and utter disrespect. And now, it was all condensed into encrypted files, bank transfers, and federal charges that were about to crash down on his head. The auditorium was a storm of shouting and camera flashes. I stood there in the crowd for a moment, totally invisible. Then the reporters saw me. "Mrs. Thorne, did you leak this information? Are you divorcing him? Mrs. Thorne, what's your response to your husband calling you his best asset?" One reporter shoved a microphone at me. I tilted my head just so my diamond necklace flashed under the stage lights. I gave a small smile. "I'll be addressing all your questions on my Instagram in 1 hour. For now, I have just one thing to say. Mr. Thorne owes me an explanation, and he certainly owes every single one of you an explanation too." The police began to clear a path. Marcus was escorted out in handcuffs, his face a total blank. As he passed Ava, he wouldn't even meet her eyes. She tried to reach for him, screaming, "Marcus," but a detective pulled her arm back. They led her away in the opposite direction. She stumbled on her stilettos, almost falling flat on her face. Nobody helped her. People just shrank back like she was contaminated. I could hear her sobbing, yelling it was all a mistake, that she was innocent. No one was listening. I just stood there and watched them both get taken away. My friend Sophia squeezed through the crowd and took my hand. Her hand was freezing and slick with sweat, but her voice was electric with adrenaline. "Isabella, you did it. You actually, really did it." I couldn't speak. There were no words for a moment like this. With hundreds of people staring, I slowly raised my chin and walked for the exit, Sophia running interference for me. Leo's voice came through my earpiece. "Isabella, I'm out of the cafe. I'll meet you downstairs with the car." I nodded. The sequins on my dress shimmered like fragments of a shattered star. The second I was out of the tech summit, my hands began to tremble. It wasn't fear, just the pure adrenaline finally catching up with me. I walked down the lavish hotel hallway, my steps feeling powerful and certain. When the elevator arrived, a few guests who'd been pulled out by the commotion were already inside. They saw me and fell dead silent, shuffling to the side. They didn't know who I was, but they knew I was the woman at the center of the storm. I didn't acknowledge them. I just watched my own reflection in the polished steel doors. My face was a perfect mask of composure. No tears, no smile, just eyes that seemed to burn a little brighter. The doors slid shut, and I heard a woman whisper behind her hand. Was that the Thorne Dynamics CEO's wife? She got her own husband arrested by the feds during his keynote address. Vicious. I leaned against the elevator wall, and a short, quiet laugh escaped me. My reflection smirked right back. "You call that vicious? You have no earthly idea what that man did to me." The elevator chimed at the lobby, and I walked out across the enormous marble floor. Sunlight streamed through the entrance, making the polished floor look like a river of light. Leo was waiting right outside, holding a small cup of espresso. He looked utterly calm, like we hadn't just unleashed a Category 5 hurricane upstairs. An espresso, right? He offered me the cup. I took a sip. The bitter warmth grounded me, and the reality finally started to sink in. "It's done." "Not entirely," Leo said, sipping his own coffee. "The whole event was recorded. The live stream has 3 separate cloud backups. Just before the agents moved in, I routed the entire unedited video feed directly to the Department of Justice. I guarantee you a few federal prosecutors are watching the whole thing over their lunch right now." I looked at him, and the college kid in a borrowed suit was gone. He had become a man in a single afternoon. "Let's go, Isabella! Let's get you home!" I clutched the small cup as we walked out onto the bustling San Francisco street. The sun felt good on my face as people hurried by, wrapped up in their own worlds. Nobody even glanced at us. We were just a brother and sister, looking like we'd just come from a business meeting. not from blowing up a billion-dollar company. By that evening, the clip from the tech summit was everywhere online. My friend Chloe sent me about a dozen screenshots. 4 of the top 10 trending hashtags were about us. Hashtag Thorne Dynamics Scandal, hashtag Marcus Thorne Arrested, hashtag Isabella Rossi Revenge, and my personal favourite, hashtag Thorne Dynamics Stock Crash. The news anchors and internet sleuths were going wild. Some people called me a hero, spinning it into the ultimate revenge story. Others called monster, claiming that after 15 years of marriage, I should have kept our problems private. But the biggest argument was about the other child. Was he really Marcus's son? That was the one question that was tearing me apart too. My lawyer, Mr. Grant, the birth certificate. He couldn't get a DNA sample, but he had already tasked a private investigator with getting a hair from the boy and rushing it to a lab. The results were expected any day now, and Mr. Grant was insistent that we use them at the most strategic moment when they would do the maximum possible damage. That moment would be the first divorce mediation. Court summons arrived the morning after the summit. Marcus, who was already out on bail, had filed for an emergency hearing. He was trying to ram through a settlement on our assets and our son's custody before his criminal trial could even begin. My lawyer, Mr. Grant, sounded serious on the phone. Marcus retained the most vicious divorce firm in San Francisco. The word is he paid them a $2 million retainer. Isabella, he's going to try to crush you. Be ready. I know, I told him, my voice perfectly calm. 2 days later, at 9 a.m., we met in a cold, anonymous conference room downtown. When Marcus entered, I hardly recognized him. After only 2 nights in a federal holding cell, his perfectly coiffed hair was a disaster. A rough, dark stubble shadowed his jaw, and deep, bruised-looking circles were carved under his eyes. He looked like he'd aged a decade. He was wearing a rumpled suit that hung loosely on his frame. The unstoppable tech, visionary Marcus Thorne had vanished. In his place was this hollowed-out, broken man. Beside him was his lawyer, flawless in a designer suit, carrying a leather briefcase and radiating pure arrogance. As Marcus sat, the lawyer leaned over to whisper something. Marcus just gave a slight nod. Then his eyes finally found mine across the table. His look was a bizarre cocktail of raw hatred and some kind of pathetic appeal for mercy. I simply stared back, not even blinking. I held his gaze until he was the one who flinched and looked away. The mediator, a retired judge, called the session to order. His lawyer spoke first, launching into a 15-minute tirade. His argument boiled down to 2 key points. First, that I had slandered Mr. Thorne, causing him immense emotional distress and destroying his career, and that he planned to sue me for it. And second, that my proposal for splitting their assets was completely delusional and would leave his client destitute. To leave him with nothing, he yelled. His performance of outrage was perfect. Mr. Thorne is the genius who built Thorne Dynamics from nothing. He gave 15 years of his life to create an empire for his family. He deserves his fair share, not to be tossed aside with nothing to his name. He concluded his speech and sat down, looking immensely satisfied with himself. The conference room was quiet. Everyone was looking at me. My own lawyer started to rise, but I put a hand on his arm to stop him. I got this. I stood, took a plain manila envelope from the table, walked to the centre of the room, and placed it down. Your Honour, gentlemen, before we discuss assets, I have a document that I think you all need to see. His lawyer just glared at me. Mr. Vance, let's skip the theatrics. This is a DNA paternity test, I said, cutting him off cold. My voice was quiet, but it sliced through the room. The subjects are Leo Vance and the boy. The probability of paternity is 0%. This child has absolutely 0 biological connection to you. The temperature in the room plummeted. For 5 straight seconds, no one breathed. Then Leo kicked his chair back so hard it almost fell and shot to his feet, eyes wild. What did you just say? That's impossible, you're lying! His lawyer was frozen, trying to grab his client's arm, but his own face was a mask of pure shock. The arbitrator took the lab report, turned to the summary page, and shot Leo a bizarre look. He pushed the report across the mahogany table to his lawyer. The lawyer grabbed it, his eyes darting across the final lines. All the colour instantly drained from his face. His mouth hung open, but nothing came out. He leaned toward Leo and whispered so low I could barely hear. But I read his lips clearly. "It's real, Leo." Leo just stood there, completely still, as if he'd been struck by lightning. His expression morphed from pure rage to utter confusion, and then to something I had never seen on his face. Complete collapse. The woman he'd sheltered for 6 years, lavished millions on, and shattered our family for, had been conning him the entire time. I watched the man who, just moments before, was ready to burn my life to the ground. He always treated me like another piece of art in his collection. Now he just collapsed back into his chair, face pale, his mouth opening and closing silently like a fish out of water. He was speechless. The arbitrator cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "The court will need to authenticate this document. But given this development, Mr. Vance, do you still wish to pursue your claims for custody and financial support?" Leo was silent. His lawyer, with all his previous confidence gone, spoke for him. We withdraw our claims at this time." Mr. Davies saw his moment and seized it. He stood and slapped my settlement demands onto the table. He flipped through the pages deliberately, his voice steady and cold. "Mr. Vance, my client sent this over last week. All real estate holdings go to Clara Stone. Full custody of Alex goes to her. You will repay the $25 million you suffered from the firm with interest. If you agree today, we will not request a full forensic audit of your offshore accounts." Mr. Davies paused, pulling 3 more thick, sealed manila folders from his briefcase and dropping them with a thud. The other lawyer physically recoiled. "We have the Swiss wire transfers and the duplicate ledgers," he said. "If we don't have an agreement by 5 p.m., these go straight to the IRS. Absolute silence." Leo just stared at the folders. A nerve in his cheek was jumping. His lawyer frantically flipped through a file before slamming it shut. "Leo," he leaned in, his voice a harsh whisper. "It's over. We have nothing. She knows everything, far more than we imagined, especially with this DNA test. Everything Chloe's been up to is a legal landmine for you. If this divorce goes to trial, the feds will bury you." Leo swallowed hard, a dry, rasping sound. He slowly turned his head to look at me. His eyes, usually full of arrogance and fire, were completely blank, just a cold, empty void. "Clara," he whispered. I braced myself for an explosion, or maybe even begging, but he just sat there for what felt like an eternity, and then said, "I'll sign it." Hearing those 3 words sent a shockwave through me, not pity. It was a profound, overwhelming sense of relief. 15 years together. And that was the only honest thing he had ever said to me. Not "I love you," not "I'm sorry," just "I'll sign it." The arbitrator instructed his clerk to prepare the final agreement. My lawyer, Mr. Davies, reviewed every single clause. A clerk handed Leo a heavy gold-nibbed fountain pen. He stared at the empty signature line on the last page for an eternity. The hum of the office lights suddenly felt bone-chilling. Finally, he signed. His hand was trembling so much. The last letter of his name ripped the paper, a sharp, jagged tear. As he walked past me, he stopped. He didn't look at me, but he muttered, just as loud enough for me to hear. "My mistake wasn't trusting her. It was underestimating you." And then he walked out. I stood alone in the silent room. I reached out and picked up the signed divorce agreement. The ink on Leo's signature was still damp. 15 years. From a cramped starter apartment to a renowned architectural firm, from just us to a family. Our entire life together was now just that one torn signature. I took a deep breath and turned to my own signature line. Signing my name used to feel like I was just an extension of him, Mrs. Leo Vance. Today I signed my own name, Clara Stone. It was clean, firm, and final. A new start. A new life for my son and me. The day our divorce was finalized, the Dallas weather was absolutely perfect. Sunlight poured through the massive courthouse windows, making the granite floors gleam. I walked out of the courtroom in a sharp white pantsuit. Mr. Davies and his team followed close behind. My friend Ava linked her arm through mine, her eyes already red and swollen. The judge's decree was swift and final. 1. The marriage of Clara Stone and Leo Vance is dissolved. 2. All marital assets are awarded to me. 3. I have sole custody of our son, Alex. 4. Leo must repay the $25 million in stolen funds. And 20% of Vance Architecture's voting shares are to be transferred into my name. He has 7 days to transfer the money. 6. His countersuit for defamation was dismissed. 7. He pays all my legal fees. As the judge read out each term, I sat there, back straight, refusing to cry. My best friend, Ava, was a mess, sobbing into a silk scarf behind me. When we got outside, she insisted they were tears of joy. "Clara Stone, you owe me the biggest brunch ever," she said, dabbing her eyes. "This whole nightmare killed my appetite. I'm wasting away over here. You owe me mimosas." I had to laugh. You got it. The moment we stepped outside the courthouse, we were hit by a wall of reporters. Ever since the scandal erupted, I was the talk of the Dallas business scene. On social media, they started calling me the steel magnolia of the design district. "Miss Stone, with the divorce finalized, do you have a statement? Clara, is it true you're moving for a total buyout of Vance Architecture?" I simply put on my sunglasses and gave the cameras a small, firm smile. The court's decision speaks for itself. As for the firm, all questions will be answered after tomorrow's emergency board meeting. With that, I slipped into a waiting black car and left the chaos behind me. The next morning, inside the Vance Architecture headquarters, the emergency board meeting was underway. There was just one item on the agenda: replacing Leo Vance as president. You could feel the tension in the air. 10 directors sat around a huge polished concrete table, with the chairman, Mr. Harrison, at one end. 2 seats were empty. I sat alone at the other end. In front of me were the papers making me a 20% owner of all voting shares. I came alone. Bringing lawyers to a meeting like this is a sign of weakness. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, Vance Architecture is currently a ship without a captain. Since Leo's scandal broke, our stock has dropped 40% in 1 week. 3 major clients have already cancelled their projects. Our main investors are demanding we name a new president by tomorrow's deadline. If we don't have a new leader by Friday, they'll call in our debts, and we are done." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room before landing on me. "Clara Stone now controls 20% of the company's shares, plus the 5% held in trust for her son, Alex. That gives her a quarter of the total vote, making her the largest shareholder. The corporate bylaws give her the right to nominate the next president." Mr. Reed, a director known for being a contrarian, spoke up. "Miss Stone, you are the largest shareholder, and your rights are clear. But Vance Architecture is in a nosedive, the stock is crashing, clients are leaving, it's a disaster. If you feel," he said, with a tone of false concern, "that you lack the specific background for this, we could hire an outside crisis manager." The room fell completely silent. A few directors took nervous sips of water, their eyes glued on me. I stood up, walked to the head of the table, and placed my hands on the back of the heavy leather president's chair, Leo's chair. I pulled it out deliberately, and then I sat down. "Mr. Sterling, gentlemen," I met the gaze of every man in that room. My voice was even, unshakable. Thorn Legacy Properties was founded by my ex-husband, yes, but it was built on my family's money. When he was on the verge of ruin 15 years ago, I liquidated my inheritance to fund his first waterfront development. 10 years ago, I used my late father's entire political network to push the permits through for our flagship tower in the seaport. I never asked for title. I was naive enough to think our marriage was a partnership. The silence in the room was absolute. But I'm not here for pity. This company doesn't just need a CEO. It needs its soul back. The market needs to believe we have a future, not just a scandalous past. I opened a folder and slid copies of a new corporate restructuring plan across the gleaming mahogany table. This was the blueprint Caleb and I had spent the last month secretly designing. First, I began outlining the strategy. We will immediately void every single contract connected to Richard Thorne, Sons and Sophia. We are also launching a full forensic audit of every transaction from the past 3 years. Anything dirty we find goes straight to the SEC. Second, we freeze all new acquisitions. Every dollar of capital is redirected to our current portfolio, and we will get 2 of our prime properties to full occupancy in the next 90 days. And third, we are establishing an independent oversight committee chaired by a former district attorney to completely rewrite our corporate governance. I leaned in, placing my palms flat on the table, and made eye contact with every single director. Legally, I have the right to claim this chair. But I'm not asking you to vote for me. I am asking you to vote for this plan, a plan to save Thorn Legacy Properties from total collapse. The boardroom was dead quiet. Then Mr. Davies raised a hand, then another, and another. Finally, Mr. Stone slowly lifted his hand, a small, impressed smile touching his lips. Miss Vance, I'll be blunt. I was firmly against you walking in here today. But that is a more decisive and, quite frankly, brilliant strategy than anything I've heard from our high-paid crisis managers. You have my vote. When Mr. Davies announced the final count, his voice was firm. It's unanimous. Eleanor Vance is hereby appointed CEO of Thorn Legacy Properties, effective immediately. The applause was tentative at first, then it swelled, echoing through the boardroom. I just sat there in that leather chair, feeling the steady, strong beat of my own heart. After they left, I lingered. Walking into the CEO's office on the top floor, I finally saw the stunning view of the Boston Harbor. Richard never let anyone in here. I'd seen it just once. Now, it was my skyline. On his desk sat a photo of him and Sophia on a sailboat in Nantucket. I picked it up, gazed at her carefree smile for a second, then dropped the entire frame into the trash can. The heavy sterling silver clattered at the bottom, a loud final note ending a 15-year lie. My phone vibrated. A text from Caleb. Mom, how'd it go? I texted him back, unanimous. Your mom is the new CEO of Thorn Legacy Properties. He sent a rocket emoji, followed by another text. Dad's next hearing is scheduled for the 10th. The prosecutor is confident the wire fraud charges will stick. His own lawyer says without evidence, he's facing at least 5 to 8 years. I read his message and felt a strange quiet wash over me, not joy, not revenge, just closure. Richard was finally going to answer for what he did, and my life could finally start again. That night, I drove back to our townhouse on Beacon Hill, but only to pack. The house was legally mine, but I couldn't stand being inside it. Too many memories, too many secrets. I'd already asked my assistant to find me a new condo downtown, closer to the office. When I walked in, Caleb was hunched over his laptop, his face glowing in the screen's light. The huge TV was on, a business channel dissecting the corporate shakeup at Thorn Legacy Properties. And in our leading business news, the board of Thorn Legacy Properties has unanimously appointed Eleanor Vance as its new CEO, marking a new chapter for the embattled real estate giant. A new chapter? Caleb didn't look away from his computer, he just grinned. Mom, you're a corporate celebrity now. You realize you can't leave the house with messy hair anymore, right? The paparazzi will be waiting. I laughed and messed up his hair. You're impossible. Anyway, you free this weekend? I want to start looking at new places. He snapped his laptop shut and stretched. Don't worry about it. I already cracked the developer's server for that new high-rise you liked. I have the schematics right here. Building security protocols, garage layouts, even their service provider agreements. My son missed nothing. I already flagged the 3 penthouse units for you, so you just need to choose your view. Is there anything you can't get into? I asked, half amazed and half horrified. You think like a covert agent. Caleb just smiled, cleaning his glasses on his shirt. When he put them back on, the setting sun hit his face, making him look older, almost formidable. He was growing up so fast. Mom, what's next? I mean, after you salvage the company. I walked to the window and pushed aside the heavy silk drapes. The Boston skyline was glittering in the twilight, a sea of indigo and gold. The plan is to fix the company, rebuild its name, and then bring in a professional to run it. Once you graduate, the entire empire is yours if you want it. If not, you build your own. And after that, I turned to him, a genuine smile finally lighting up my face. I'm going to travel. Then I'm going to go home, restore that old farmhouse my grandparents left me in the Berkshires, and plant a massive rose garden. Caleb came and stood next to me by the window. We watched the city lights flicker to life. Mom, you told me once I was the best thing you ever built. I was. What are you talking about? He showed me his phone. The screen displayed a new corporate registration, Vance Endeavours, and listed under the founders were our 2 names. I need to tell you something, he said, his whole demeanour shifting. His voice was serious. The best choice I ever made was standing in that meeting, telling you to go after everything. The name echoed in my head, my family name, not a single trace of Thorn to be found. I wrapped my arms around his neck, trying not to cry. He hugged me back tightly, and outside the whole city seemed to be shining just for us. The city was alive with energy, same as it ever was, and for the first time in a very long time, so was I.